this is one of the most horrific crashes in MotoGP history. It was so bad they literally had to redesign the track forever. In 2020, two riderless bikes traveling over 150 miles an hour narrowly missed Valentino Rossi and Maverick Vinales by an unbelievably small margin. But how did something this dangerous even happen in the first place? Well, I've analysed the entire crash frame by frame, as well as the official investigations and the surprising physics behind it. Because understanding a crash like this matters, not just for the drama, but because these terrifying moments help shape the future of motorsport and ultimately make it safer. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why MotoGP had to permanently change the Red Bull Ring. So what exactly happened leading up to the crash? This is important to understand because of just how unique and one in a million it was. The start of the race was pretty normal all in all. The two main riders involved in the initial crash were Frankie Morbidelli and Johann Zarco, who started 7th and 9th. Zarco didn't get a great start and dropped a few places, and Morbidelli did have a better start, but he was struggling after a couple of laps. By lap 6, they were running in 9th and 10th place. On lap 9, Zarco got a great run on Morbidelli using the slipstream going into turn 3. Turn 3's always been one of the best places to overtake at the Red Bull Ring. The bikes in a slipstream could easily hit over 200 miles an hour before they brake, which is also the reason why it's so dangerous, but I'll come to that in a second, so stay with me. With the run Zarco had, he ended up making a move on the left-hand side of Morbidelli going into turn 3. It was a little bit aggressive, but it was nothing out of the ordinary, so it seemed to be done and dusted. But this was the precise moment where it started to go all wrong and cause a major chain reaction. For a little bit of context and to show you just how quickly things went wrong, this is the normal racing line going into turn 3 at the Red Bull Ring. The rider keeps the bike over to the left, trail brakes into turn 3 to get the best run on the next long straight. But if we look back at the overtake, as soon as Zarco made the pass, he moves over to the right-hand side. Now, if we take the position of Zarco's bike at this point here, his racing line looks like this. It's much tighter, which means he'll lose out on the next straight. This is actually a pretty normal strategy in all types of motorsport. Once you make the move, you try and cover and block the inside so that the person you've just overtaken doesn't make the move back on you. But as Zarco moves over in front of Morbidelli, he brakes, which leaves Morbidelli almost no time to react. And at this point, there's no stopping what happens next. Zarco and Morbidelli collide at nearly 180 miles an hour. Now, you might have thought this was immediately Zarco's fault. I thought the same, and so did the MotoGP stewards. Zarco and Morbidelli have just collided at this point. The best outcome is that both bikes would have fallen over and then slid to a halt. But that didn't happen. They were just going too fast. And whatever direction they were going in when the riders fell off is the direction they'd keep going in until the bikes hit something. Maverick Vinales and Valentino Rossi were only a few seconds up the road, with no idea that two 150-something kilo missiles were hurtling towards them. So both Vinales and Rossi both turned into the corner. Why wouldn't they? Zarco's bike managed to hit the tiny little air fence on the inside of turn 3 and slow down, missing Maverick by a fraction. But Morbidelli's bike managed to squeeze in the smallest of gaps between Vinales and Rossi. Now, I can't show you the full on board here, but go and Google it for yourself. It's absolutely insane. Now, even though it was a freak accident, there were a few different factors in play. You say hi. They're all sort of linked together, but the first two we already know: the track layout and the speed. But these aren't that uncommon. There's lots of these big braking zones followed by tight corners, and these bikes can go way faster than 200 miles an hour. The thing that made the crash as bad as it was the lack of one particular thing. Have a look at this. This is turn 3 at the Red Bull Ring in 2020. Can you see anything missing? It's not that easy to recognize because the track's been this way forever. Well, if you look where Zarco and Morbidelli's bike went, there's practically no barriers or air fencing. So what did the owners of the Red Bull Ring do? There was no way they were going to leave it as it was. Well, this is what it looked like in 2021. Not only did they put huge air fences up, they also put a tyre barrier and catch fencing up. So if the exact same crash were to happen, there would have been a much higher chance that both bikes would have been caught and stopped before flying across the track. But Dorna, the organisers of MotoGP, as well as others, weren't convinced it was enough. The bikes were still hitting 200 miles an hour before turn 3. So Red Bull Ring, Dorna, the FIM, the FIA, and famous racetrack designer Hermann Tilke set about changing the track to make it safer. This is the aerial view of Turn 1 to Turn 3 in 2020. This was the same shot taken in 2022, with a brand new chicane in the middle of the main straight leading up to Turn 3. And unsurprisingly, it worked. Just look at the difference in the top speed before braking for that same 90-degree right-hander. Although changing the track isn't easy as you might think. Now, I'm not joking when I say this. There are hundreds and hundreds of rules that every single racetrack needs to follow to be used in MotoGP. If you want to learn more about these insane rules, then click on this video here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.